With one fell swoop, the Caliphate's destiny was sealed, and bit by bit, governors began their bids for independence, until not a trace of the old Umayyad power remained. These are the last whimpers of a dynasty long dead. Hey gamers, always remember, people on the internet speak facts, and you should implicitly believe me. In the years of 1009 and 1031, a civil war known as the Fitna of al-Andalus rocked the peninsula, with governors either seeking independence, seeking to become the next caliph, or just simply fucking shit up. The result of that was the Taifa system, and the eventual arrival of the Almoravids and Almoravids. These were dynasties hailing from Morocco. And today, we're talking about the Taifas. But generally, I want to tell you about the last moments of true strength that the Moorish Iberians could muster, and the fact that that strength did not even come from themselves. After the Iberian Caliphate was well and truly dissolved, around 33 independent Moorish kingdoms were formed, each one vying for control and supremacy between each other and the Catholic kingdoms to the north. As I talked about in my last video, this marked sort of a shift in the Reconquista. While before it was common practice for the northern kings to pay tribute to the caliph to avoid an invasion, the reverse had taken shape now. The Moorish kings were the ones paying tribute to the Catholic leaders of the north. In fact, the Catholic kings 100% helped to bring about this era. During the civil war that racked al-Andalus, the northern kings directly helped, supplying troops to all sides of the conflict. And with the region of al-Andalus fragmented and powerless, the Catholic kings took the golden opportunity. But let me tell you about these Taifas. What's the deal with them? Were they cool and hip like Kanye? Or dumb and stupid like the woke Keanu Reeves? Well, obviously they ranged in size, from around a quarter the size of the old Caliphate to little more than a castle and what surrounded it. Each one of them were established by notables from the surroundings, and by and large, these Taifas were established by people who were in a position of power in the old administration. These leaders, in regards to who they were, fell into three categories: either ethnic Andalusis, Berbers, or the slave groups. Oh, and as a final note, I am definitely not using Homage to Al-Andalus by Michael Berry as a source. No, I looked all of this up like a true researcher on Wikipedia, because I'm a big smart boy buying his own chicken tenders from his mom's basement. The slaves themselves had been gradually gaining more and more power in the region of Al-Andalus. Al-Rahman III, for example, who was the first caliph of the now defunct caliphate, packed his court and administration with slaves. And just a little fun fact for you to give at your teacher's history lesson when you reach the 17th century is that the slaves had power. But the biggest Taifas were the Taifa of Zaragoza, of course, Seville, and Turid. We will discuss what happened to each one, but first we should talk about Cordoba, the seat of power of the Caliphate. The city, in the era of the Taifas, was ruled by a triumvirate, and chief among those was the man called Ibn Yawar. This is the Reconquista is the worst video series I could do because I can't pronounce any of the Arab names, and I can't even say Berber with an English pronunciation. Like, holy fuck. The old city was hit hard during the war. It got sieged multiple times, the people starved and they were brutalized, and they were also dirt fucking poor because someone just took the treasury. But unpronounceable bro seemed to be able to restore order. He made a citizen's militia, and he also restored the broken economy. Apparently, Yawar was also a modest man, refusing to live in the royal palace, and instead he chose to live in his home. He seems to have served as a sort of peace broker in international affairs, hosting many rulers which were exiled by the wars they were fighting amongst each other, and doing his best to mediate conflicts. This man, I think he did understand that no good would come out of the Iberian Muslims fighting each other. But unpronounceable bro would die in 1043. The Taifa of Cordoba would lose its independence to the Taifa of Seville in 1070, and the rulers of Cordoba were exiled. Now, Seville was the most warmonger out of all of the kingdoms, carving large swaths of territory ranging from the Atlantic coast all the way to Murcia. And Seville itself was ruled by Andalusis, and a man came forward to rule this kingdom. He was called Muhammad bin Ismail bin Abad. I think he really loved bins. And this man really wanted to be legitimate. So, what did he do? Well, he got some poser to pretend to be Hisham II, the last real caliph of the caliphate, who apparently came back from the east. Yes, that east which desperately tried to kill all of the Umayyads they could get their hands on. Yeah, you're a perfect match. Regardless, he got most of the surviving women from the old harem to recognize his pretender. So, with the legitimacy he wanted and a caliph at his back, Muhammad kept expanding, mostly to the south towards Granada and the Taifa of Badajoz. However, once Muhammad died, he was succeeded by his son, who kept the expansionist policy, managing to bring most of the Orontes, Huelva, and Niebla under civilian control, along with several other taifas to the south and east. In fact, save for the territory which would much later become the Kingdom of Granada, the civilian taifa ruled pretty much the entire south without anyone matching. The current leader is al-Mu'tadid, and with their secured position, Mu'tadid saw fit to declare that, "Oh no, the Caliph Hisham is dead. He died years ago actually, we just forgot to announce it, so we'll do better." The civilian Taifa, despite its control over the south, like all others, had to pay massive tribute to the northern kingdoms, who, having grown far more powerful than the Taifas, were sending raids deep into Moorish territory. In fact, the Catholic kingdoms formed the system which they would call pariahs. Basically, it's sort of the money that a shopkeeper gives to a gangster for protection. But that protection is it's usually just from the said gangster. This system became a very part of the system of governance for the Taifas, and the tributes at times became so large that several Taifas actually went bankrupt because of this. Eventually, however, the Taifa of Seville was incorporated into the Almoravid dynasty. Our next Taifa on our list is the Taifa of Zaragoza. They were established quite early on in the year of 1018, and they were led by the Banu Tujib tribe, quickly being replaced by the Banu Hud tribe. They, however, remained independent for a very long time, nearly 100 years. This Taifa, however, spent most of its time fighting pointless wars with the northern Christians and the Taifa of Turid. However, it was only when a man with the self-imposed title of al-Muqtadir came to power that Zaragoza would begin expanding, taking and incorporating a few independent Taifas. Al-Muqtadir was a cultured man who supported the arts, and it's due to his efforts that the Muslim Zaragozan palace is still around. His son, who continued these policies and was also a mathematician. But right before, they were forced into the pariah system, and despite resistance, they were indeed incorporated into the Almoravids, same as the other Taifas. But there is one more kingdom for us to discuss before we talk about who the fuck the Almoravids were, and that is the Taifa of Turid. These guys, boy, they didn't catch a break in this whole mess. Turid remains to this day one of the most important cities in Iberia. Nowadays, mostly for its insane history and culture. It was the capital of the long dead and long forgotten Visigothic kingdom. And the Taifa itself was ruled by the Dornunids, who attempted to expand their territory multiple times and establish a strong base of operations from Turid itself. The Dornunids were a Berber tribe hailing from North Africa, like many other Taifa kings. This Taifa, I think I can say with reasonable certainty that it never really came into its own. It spent years fighting for independence in the fitna of al-Andalus, and then spent even more time fighting Seville, Zaragoza, and the north, the Catholic north. They even, at one point, they asked the King of Leon for help against Zaragoza, and they got attacked by the Leonese 20 years after that. But to be clear, they did have power. Al-Mahmud, the king of this Taifa, and was one of its last kings, it is said that he was one of the most powerful individuals in southern Iberia. And as far as I can tell, that's kind of it. The Taifa spent all of its time here basically fighting its neighbors and gradually losing territory. So they did have strength, but they spent their entire existence just fighting. By 1085, the Taifa's capital and its namesake, Toledo, was definitively captured by the King of Castile. This moment, I think, was one that shocked the Moorish rulers in the south. It was the moment where the Catholic kingdoms were no longer the northern weak kingdoms to the north, as I've sort of referred them as, and I think they had in their mentality, but they were the kingdoms of Spain. They were as much on this peninsula as them, if not more so, and they were not going to stop, and there was no way that the divided Taifas could stand up to them. So, who are they gonna call? Ghost button! No, I'm not doing that. They called for help from the Almoravid Empire to the south in Africa. And who were these North Africans? Well, the Almoravid dynasty were the descendants of a series of allied tribes which hailed from modern-day Mauritania and Western Sahara. They traveled all over the West, eventually making their way north to Morocco. They even founded the city of Marrakesh? I have no idea. I really don't. I apologize, but only because Moroccans exist. It should be noted that the Almoravids were not all that old. They weren't an old political entity in the world. In fact, they were formed during the Taifa era of the peninsula sometime during the 1050s. In fact, they only founded a city that I can't name, Marrakesh? I don't know. In 1071, just a little over a decade before they crossed Gibraltar. In 1086, the leader of the Almoravids was a man named Yusuf. Oh, fuck me. Ibn Tashfin. And he is who the Iberian Moors called for help due to the encroaching Catholics. Yusuf crossed the strait, landing at Algeciras, a town that was given to him in exchange for help, and he fought the Castilian forces at the Battle of Sagrajes. So this battle was fought in the north of Badajoz, and I think it serves as a great reminder of the power of the old Umayyad Caliphate. The Almoravids fought at this battle, yes, but so did up to a total of 10 different Taifas, who faced off against a coalition of the Kingdom of Leon, Castile, and Aragon. Before the battle began, all the leaders met up, and reportedly Yusuf gave the Catholic kings 3 choices: convert to Islam, pay tribute, or die. The Almoravids came to Iberia with one goal in mind: restore Muslim superiority over the peninsula. And if this offer he gave to the Catholic kings is to be believed, they were certainly behaving as the top dog when they got there. The Castilian king who was in the battle reportedly suffered an injury, which caused him to limp for the rest of his life. Our actual casualty rates for the Castilians report either just 500 men returning home from the original 2,500, or about half the army being lost. However, despite the Almoravid victory, they reportedly lost as many as 3,000 soldiers, which forced Yusuf to return home, as dissent against him was also growing there. He would return again a few years later to help the Muslim kings, who were attempting to destroy a castle that the Catholic king of Castile built deep inside Muslim territory. However, Yusuf failed at this, in large part due to the constant infighting of the Muslim kings. And it seems that despite the Almoravid efforts, the status quo of the peninsula was maintained. The Catholic kings kept harassing the Muslims and making stupid bank out of their pariah system. By 1090, Yusuf or Tashufin could see the writing on the wall. The remnants of the old caliphate, which even ruled the region he now called home of Morocco, stood no chance against Castile and the other kingdoms. How could they? They were hopelessly divided and bickering far more than your parents after your mom found out about the unspeakable things I did to your dad in the bedroom. He invaded the peninsula, set on taking it for himself, something which he never really planned on doing at all before. His first target was the Taifa of Granada, which the ruler there thought that he would be spared, as his lineage and that of Tashufin's were from the same tribe. And of course, he was hopelessly mistaken. The Granadan people reportedly welcomed Tashufin with open arms, and the king of that Taifa went into exile in the Maghreb. Then Malaga fell, then Seville, then Badajoz, and that one, desperate to survive, asked for the Catholics' help, and in return, the king of Badajoz had to give up a bunch of land to the Catholics, which kind of pissed off Tashufin, who, when he arrived in Badajoz, killed him and also killed a bunch of his sons. The eastern portions of the peninsula saw pretty much the same thing happen. Almost immediately, the Almoravid army went as far as a few dozen kilometers to the south of Valencia, where El Cid would set himself up sometime later. That's another interesting figure that I should make a video on. Someday, I don't know. Valencia itself would remain under the control of Cid's family for a good while, until 1102, when the Almoravids finally took it over. And with that, Moorish Iberia was finally reunited under someone's control.